Hello everyone, my name is Lennart Ravn-Herwagen, and today I would like to give you a presentation called School Striking for the Climate, Some Didactical Perspectives. To begin with, I would like to say just a little bit about myself. I'm an associate professor in social studies at the Department of Teacher Education at the University College Copenhagen. And you should know that social studies is a combination of politics, economics, and sociology. So what I basically do is that I educate future social studies teachers so that they are capable of teaching uh, social studies to 8th and 9th grade pupils in Danish schools where social studies is a mandatory subject. And this is where I work. This is called Campus Carlsberg. It consists of the grey building in the middle of the picture and the flat brown building to the left of it. And Campus Carlsberg is situated not too far from the main train station in Copenhagen. This is the courtyard of the campus. Here students and professors come and go, and perhaps sometimes stop for a smoke or a little chat. This is the inside of the campus. Could be a bank, could be a hospital, but it is in fact an educational institution. Right, and now to the main topic of my presentation. You may know this young Swedish girl. Her name is Greta Thunberg, and she has become world famous for her climate change activism. She has traveled around Europe and now also traveled around the US to give speeches about climate change and to put pressure on politicians to do something about it. Her perhaps most famous speech is the one that she gave at the UN Climate Action Summit September this year, where she said, "This is all wrong. I shouldn't be standing here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to me for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?" Greta Thunberg's rise to fame began in the summer of 2018, where she skipped classes for 3 weeks, and instead she went to the Swedish Parliament. And there she would sit with this sign that says a school strike for the climate. And she talked to people and she expressed her critique of the Swedish government and the reluctance of the Swedish government to follow the so-called Paris Agreement, where many governments promised to lower their emissions of carbon dioxide. This school strike that Greta Thunberg began inspired a whole youth movement called Fridays for Future. And the basic idea of this youth movement is to skip classes on Fridays and go to public places and put pressure on politicians to address the issue of climate change. And this picture shows students and pupils in Copenhagen. It's from the Facebook site of Fridays for Future, and here you see a similar picture from Ukraine. I think it's from Kiev. And Fridays for Future has actually developed into real mass events. To this date, Fridays for Future events have attracted crowds of millions of people all over the world in close to 150 countries. This youth movement and the school strikes for the climate could be interesting, I guess, for many reasons. But from a social studies perspective, I think they are very interesting because the whole idea and the overall purpose of the social studies in Denmark is to enable pupils to take active part in a democratic society. And you could say that these school strikes is a very significant case of youth activism where young people and also underage people take part in society. And therefore you could say that it seems relevant that social studies teachers and perhaps also teachers from other subjects bring the school strike movement into class and discuss these events and this type of activism with the students and pupils. But you could of course say that it's still an open question what teachers actually should do with these discussions, what should be emphasized and which lessons should be drawn from these school strikes. This is where I would like to introduce you to some points and point of discussion which could give a structure to these considerations. First and foremost, I would say that school striking should be seen as essentially as an act of young people. Some type of political action and political activism are only options for adults. Only adults can take part in parliamentary elections, either as nominees or as voters. School strikes, on the other hand, are only options for people who go to school, and that is typically children and young people. And this basically means that the young people can act politically in a way in which adults cannot. And this, I think, could be brought into class. The teacher might ask how young people in general can influence climate change policies, which types of action, which type of tools are available for them. This could be a question about individualized types of action, where typically people choose to buy climate-friendly types of goods. That could be one type of action. But school strikes is a collective type of action where people do something together. So you can also ask what are the qualities of school strikes, perhaps as a collective type of action compared with the other kinds of youth activism in regard to the issue of climate change. And as I just mentioned, climate strikes is essentially and exclusively an act of young people. So you could also ask the pupils if something can be achieved through school strikes which cannot be achieved by adults. One way of interpreting school strikes is that they are about giving up one's future. You could say that school strikes have a strong symbolic meaning in this way. And Greta Thunberg herself said, why should I study for a future that will soon be no more? Yeah, and that basically means that why should I invest in a future that may not exist? This is also a unique kind of message that can be sent from young people to decision makers. The future, as you may know, belongs to the young, and therefore only young people may sacrifice their education and their future for the sake of climate change protests. This could also be brought into class. You could perhaps ask the pupils how such a sacrifice could be considered an appropriate response to climate change policies. Um, is it just the right way to address these policies, or is it too much, as some may also point out? You could also ask the pupils what political decision makers currently are doing to address climate change, um, and why they are not doing enough, since this is the whole idea of climate striking and sending a protest to political decision makers. School striking could also be seen as a rebellion against grown-ups. Skipping class has traditionally been seen as an act of rebellion, where young people disobey their parents, their teachers, and other adult authorities. And you can see that there are numerous movies and books where young people carry out such a protest against authorities. Um, and again, Greta Thunberg herself said, "Let me remind you that our political leaders have wasted decades through denial and inaction. And since our time is running out, we have decided to take action. We have started to clean up your mess, and we will not stop until we are done." So what she is doing here is actually to make a division between younger and older generation. The older generation and their leaders have not taken their responsibility, have not taken it serious, and therefore young people have to take over. And this would give reason to the following point of discussion. One could discuss the um, the um, the attitude that some grown-ups have shown towards school striking. Some including very important politicians, has been very much provoked by school striking and told young people to go back to school. So one could ask if the provocation that might be a part of school striking should be seen as a strength or a problem. And one could also ask the pupils if school strikes in some sense illustrate a division between generation. And by this I mean that young people are the ones who take climate change serious, and the older generations are the ones who do not. That was about it. Thank you very much for your attention, and a special thank you to the organizing committee for letting me speak at this event. Thank you very much.